How to break a habit, breaking the habit. Now, if you're sitting here today and you think, why did I have to come today? This is the thing. You're here for a reason, okay? And by the way, none of us are perfect. All of us have struggles, all of us have issues. And today we're talking about the issues of breaking habits. We all have things that we wish we wouldn't do, that we have struggles with. I don't know what it might be for you, but I do know this. The quality of your life will depend on the quality of your habits. A lot of the things we do without even thinking. This is just a routine that we have. And sometimes we get in routines that leave out things like reading the Bible or praying or giving. We just leave those out, or going to worship. And sometimes we put some other habits in there that we should not have in there, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And this whole series is looking at the idea of identity-based habits. This idea is you just don't want to say, I just want to lose 20 pounds, or I just want to stop smoking. Those are good things, but we're thinking that you should look at your life and think, whatever kind of person that you feel the Lord's leading you to be. Like, what would a godly man look like? What would a godly man, what kind of habits would he have? Oh, he looks like you? Amen, brother. So, based on who you want to become, what bad habit do you need to break? Think about if you want to be that godly mother, or you want to be a healthy person, or you want to be a strong, bold witness to Christ. What bad habit doesn't fit that? Sometimes the thing you're doing doesn't fit who you want to be. And that's what we're going to look at today. And, you know, this is hard because good habits pay off in the future. You know, you can have a good habit and you won't, you eat right, you resist those donuts, you don't eat that extra piece of pizza, and you don't see anything immediately. But down the road, you have payoff. It's usually in the future. If you smoke, a lot of times you don't see cancer until years later. And so that's the struggle, because bad habits often immediately you have perceived benefits. Not necessarily do you have benefits, but you have perceived benefits with bad habits. For instance, if you eat that donut and you say, that is good. You know, it gives you serotonin levels rise in your body. You think that's tasty. That's good. And you smoke that cigarette and you think, boy, that calms me down. I feel better now. You know, and if you say, well, bad habits don't make me feel better, you're probably not doing them right. I'm just saying, because bad habits have a tendency to be that for us. Bad habits we enjoy. And today I want to look at this character in the Bible that had some bad habits. In the book of Judges, you have these stories. I'll give you the background. So in the Bible, the story of the Bible, you have Joshua that led the people finally into the Holy Land. And then Joshua died. And after Joshua died, it says the people did what they thought was right in their own eyes. Kind of like the culture is today. Everybody did what they thought was right in their own eyes. They had no king. They don't have strong leaders. They had judges. Now, a judge is not like a judge we think of in the courtroom today. In this context, a judge was like a political leader or a military leader. He was like a chieftain. And this is the time of the judges. There were several judges, and one of the judges was Samson. I don't know how long it's been since you've studied Samson, but that's who we're going to look at today, a judge that had many bad habits, especially involving women. But, I know there are guys who pick the wrong woman, that happens, and there are girls that pick the wrong man, okay? And don't elbow anybody next to you, okay? That's not a good idea. In Judges 14, beginning in verse 1, Samson, this is the first thing we learn about Samson other than his birth, and I'll tell you about his birth. So, his father, we don't know his mother's name. His father's name was Manoah. and he married this woman, and they had a child, and an angel tells them that this child will be a Nazarite. Now, that's not a Nazarene. A Nazarene is somebody from Nazareth. A Nazarite was a special kind of Jew that had three things that he could not do for a Nazarite. The first one is that you could not drink any kind of fruit off the vine, okay? You couldn't drink even grape juice. You couldn't drink any alcohol. Second thing is you couldn't touch anything dead. No dead body. You couldn't go to a funeral. You couldn't be around, even if it's your own family. You couldn't be around anything that would cause you to be unclean. They were set apart. And then the third one was, hold on, it'll come. What was it? That's right, because I had that problem. You understand? The third one was you couldn't cut your hair. Imagine how long your hair would be is from the time you were born till you were an adult. Nobody ever cut your hair. If I could grow hair, I would grow it long. But Samson, he could not cut his hair, and so he could not drink alcohol. He could not touch anything dead, and he could not cut his hair. Now, Samson was not a great leader. He had some big flaws, and I wonder if he didn't do all three of these things in his life. But we're looking at the beginning of his life. The first thing we read about him is in 14 verse 1. Samson went down to Timnah, and he saw there a young Philistine woman. And when he returned, he said to his mom and dad, by the way, the mom and dad are supposed to choose who you get married in this culture. He did the opposite. He said, I've seen a Philistine woman in Timnah, now get her for me as my wife. I doubt anybody in here has ever told your parents that. And his father and mother replied, isn't there an acceptable woman among your relatives or among our own people? Which sounds a little weird. But this culture, this is the way that they did it with kings and stuff. Must you go to the uncircumcised Philistines to get a wife? Now, this wasn't racism. This was you need to be set apart for your faith, so you won't get mixed in with the Philistines, who were very ungodly people. But Samson said to his father, get her for me. She's the right one for me. Now, all his life, Samson had a problem with women. He saw, he wanted, it didn't matter her background, it didn't matter who she came from, that's what she wanted. Now, I'm not going to go through every verse in this story, but I'll tell you a little of the background of the story. So, his mother and father says, okay, and so they go to this wedding. They're going to have a wedding in Timnah. It lasts 7 days. Imagine a wedding lasts 7 days. By the way, you know what kind of wedding it was? It was like a beer keg kind of wedding. There's a lot of drinking that goes on these Jewish weddings for 7 days. Now, I don't know if he did or not. Probably he didn't, but we don't know. But it's 7 days, and he's with his buddies and or the people that he's met, and he starts bragging. And because on the way to the wedding ceremony, the 7-day ceremony, he comes across a lion. And the lion he has a fight with, and he rips the lion apart. And it says something really strange. It says he rips it apart like you rip apart a young goat. Now, I've never ripped apart a young goat. I guess they ripped apart young goats all the time. But he was very strong, and he ripped apart a young goat. And that's when he met her, and then he came down the road again, and he found, within the lion, he found a beehive and honey. And so he goes to the dead lion, which he's not supposed to touch dead things. But he takes the honey out of the dead lion, and he feeds it to his parents. He doesn't tell them where it came from. He feeds it to other people, and it's good. And then he may have had something to drink, I don't know, but he's talking out of his head, and he comes up with this little rhyme. He replied, out of the eater something to eat, out of the strong something sweet. He might even be singing it. And somebody hears him saying that, and they say, what does that mean? He said, well, I'll tell you what. There's 30 of y'all that are in my wedding, 30 guys, groomsmen. He said, if you can guess this riddle, I will buy you 30 pairs of suits, okay? 30 new suits. And if you can not do it, then you have to buy me 30. Well, these 30 guys were related and friends with his new bride, the Philistine woman. And so they meet with her, and they said, hey, get him to tell you, and then you tell us, because if you don't, we'll hurt you. And so she uses the oldest trick in the book. She cries. 7 days she cries. You ever been around somebody that cried? I mean, this is a girl that he's in love with, wants to marry, and for 7 days of the wedding party, she is crying. That should be a signal to you, by the way. And after 7 days, he couldn't take it anymore, and so he tells her what it was, what the riddle was. She goes to these 30 guys, she tells them, and then on the 7th day, in verse 18, it says, before sunset, on the 7th day, the men of the town said to him the answer. What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than the lion? And Samson said to them, this is very unusual. This is in the Bible. He said, if you'd not plow with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle. Don't ever, ever call a woman a heifer, okay? Bad choices all through this. And so he gets angry, and you don't want to make Samson angry, okay? He had incredible strength, and so he goes and he kills 30 other guys, takes their clothes off them, and give them to the wedding entourage. And he leaves the wedding party, and not too long after that, he comes back to claim his bride, and his parents thought, this woman is wrong for him, so we're going to give her to somebody else. So they give his bride to somebody else because they think that he wouldn't want her. And then he gets really angry, and I'm not going to go through all the story, but he gets really angry at them, and he hurts a lot of people, and finally he hides out in the cave, and they tie him up, and that was his plan, to have them tie him up so it would lure the enemy in. And the enemy comes in, he takes a jawbone of an ass and kills 1,000 men. Well, by the way, I think an ass jawbone would be dead. He's probably not supposed to touch it. But he does. And he uses jawbone of an ass to kill 1,000 people. So he's a very powerful man. He's got most of what he wants. But he didn't have good luck with getting married. So time goes by. He's a judge for 20 years. Later on, in chapter 16, it says, one day Samson went to Gaza, where he saw a prostitute, and he went in to spend the night with her. This woman thing. Do you know how far Gaza is from his hometown? 25 miles. Now, I looked that up. That's 56,250 steps. Now, how could a guy be stupid enough to go that far to get with a woman? Do you think anybody would do that today? It happens all the time. All the time. People have this habit, this lust, this thing they can't get over. And, most times when you do bad habits, it doesn't all happen at once. It's one step at a time. Maybe after he's halfway there, maybe he'd done about, 10,000 steps. He's thinking, I can't go back now. I've come too far. I'm going to go through with it. And so he went to Gaza, and he was with a prostitute. Another little piece of his life. In verse 4, sometime later, he fell in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek whose name was what? Remember that song? My, Delilah. You don't know that song? Why, Delilah. If you don't know that song, you ought to look it up. It's a great song. And he meets with this woman. Delilah, he falls in love with her. Is she a good one or a bad one? Bad one. The rulers of the Philistines went to her and said, see if you can lure him into showing you the secret of his great strength. How can we overpower him so we may tie him up and subdue him? Each of us will give you 1,100 shekels. They don't threaten her with her life. They just want to give her money. Give her money if she betrays her new husband. And so she does it. And she complains to him that he doesn't trust her, and so he tells her a lie. The first time he doesn't tell her the truth. He says, well, if you tie my hands with bowstrings that have never been wet, then I won't be able to get loose. But she does that, and then she says the Philistines are coming, and he breaks loose. And then he says, no, if you tie me with ropes, new ropes. She begs him again, and he ties him with new ropes, and that doesn't work. And then if you weave my hair a certain way, then that will subdue me, and that doesn't work either. And so 3 times she tries to get him to tell him the secret of her strength, and he doesn't, but she complains about it, and she keeps pressuring him, and he has this thing for women. He cannot say no. He will not say no. He can, but he doesn't. And so he gives in to her. She has him fall asleep in her lap. And while he's asleep, she calls in the Philistines. They carefully shave his head. You know the story. Most of you know the story. He wakes up and they take him. They gouge out his eyes. He becomes blind. They have a big party to celebrate, and they tie him to 2 big posts. And it says, there's a little line in the Bible that says, but his hair starts to grow back. That should have been a sign to them, but it's not. And his hair starts to grow back, and he prays the Lord for forgiveness to give him strength. And in the middle of the party, when 3,000 people were there in the temple, he pushes on the 2 columns with incredible strength and knocks the whole temple down, kills all 3,000 and Samson. It's not a happy ending. And his fall was that he could not resist. He couldn't resist these bad choices. And so I want to ask for just a minute, how do you break a bad habit? Well, you can't do anything without the Lord giving you strength. But I'm going to look at a couple of things I think might help you. First off, you have to acknowledge it. You have to acknowledge it. Sometimes we don't even acknowledge. If you go to AA, what's one of the first things they have to do? They have to admit they have a problem. That's the first step. To acknowledge it, to say, okay, I do have an issue here. I do need to struggle with this. And to acknowledge it. There's a verse, James 1:21 says, therefore get rid of all moral filth and the evil that is so prevalent, and this is so true today, so prevalent in our culture today, and humbly accept the word planted in you, which can save you. To acknowledge that you can't defeat it by yourself. Maybe it could be an attitude. It could be a critical spirit that you criticize easily other people. Maybe it's a gossiping tongue. Sometimes you say, well, I'm just talking about this problem so we can pray for them. Yeah. Maybe it's a complaining. Maybe that's a habit you have, that you are constantly talking about how negative something is, and it becomes that way because you're talking about it that way. It might be all kinds of things. It could be a physical thing. Maybe it's eating the wrong thing. I know I struggle with stuff. I told you go to Harris Teeter. First thing you walk in is that donut right there at eye level. Maybe that's a thing for you. Maybe it's binge watching Netflix. Maybe it's being on your phone too much. Maybe it's being on Facebook too much. Do you know that you can adjust your Facebook page so if you're on it too long, it makes you click off? Because you don't need to spend your life looking at what other people doing, posing in pictures and videos. Right? So you have to acknowledge these things. You have to say, okay, all right. Second, make it difficult to do. You know, in having a good habit, you make it easy. In having a bad habit, you make it difficult. You make it where it's not so easy to do. Proverbs 4 says this, do not set foot on the path of the wicked or walk in the way of evildoers. Don't even go that direction. Avoid it. Do not travel on it. Turn from it. Go on your way. Don't start. You might think of it this way. Remove the trigger. We're all triggered by different things. I don't know what triggers you, but I know what triggers me. I'm not going to tell you all of them. I told people about my donut thing, and I had 2 people buy me donuts and put them on my desk. You got to remove the trigger, though. Well, what do I mean by trigger? Well, I'm going to say a couple of things about 5 triggers. Place, time, mood, moment, and people. First one, place. You know something I figured out? I usually don't overeat when I go to the gym. You know, where do you go? If you go there a lot, you know, that's what you have a tendency to do. Watch the places you go. Oh, the places you go, Zeus said, Dr. Zeus. Go to the right places. You know, you say, well, I'm going to witness at that bar. Yeah, right. Yeah. Don't go there. Don't put yourself in a position where you're going to have this trigger for you. Time. You know, when you're bored and alone, don't start looking at things on your phone. Do you know how many people have porn addictions today? How many men and women, I guess? Late at night, when you're bored or alone, don't go there. Don't start doing things. If you remember the story of another guy that had trouble with a woman, his name was David. It says in 2 Samuel 11, in the spring at the time when kings go to war. Instead of going to war, when you're supposed to do that, David sent Joab out with the king's men, so he didn't go. Guess he was tired of going out there, and so he was supposed to go, but he sent Joab instead and the whole army, and they destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. And one evening, David got up from his bed, and he walked around on the roof of the palace, and from the roof he saw a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful. If he'd have gone to where he was supposed to go, he never would have had that happen. Wrong place, wrong time. I wonder if he kind of knew that might happen in that period, that time of day. I don't know. Third, mood. What do you do when you're tired or lonely or angry or hungry? Somebody said once, hungry and angry together is hangry. Okay, you ever get hangry? When you're like that, do not go shopping. Don't go to the grocery when you're starving to death. What are you going to buy? Everything you can get. I knew this one person, and she only went to the grocery once a month, and she would buy hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars of food, and it would all be there in the house then. If you gave me hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars of food, and all I had to do was open the refrigerator and get it, I would be getting it all the time. And sometimes I complained to Sharon. I said, we don't have any cookies. And she said, that's right. That's a good thing. Because you don't need it, because when you have a bad mood and you're trying to do something, sometimes, do you ever reward yourself with food? I do. It's not good. Do a good sermon. Oh, let's go out and get something good to eat. You know? And that happens all the time. And so another one, a moment. Okay. There's something that happens in your life, and it's a fight, maybe between you and your husband, and maybe your girlfriends call you, and you have a man-bashing party, okay? Talking about how bad men are, and you're gossiping. Or maybe after a softball game, and they bring out a keg of beer. You think that ever happens? Yeah, it happens a lot. Are those cues, or those moments when that's going on, and you know that's going to happen, just get ahead of it and leave. Take yourself out of that experience. The last one, people. Now, I think that we should have friends who are, every Christian should have some people who they're friends with who aren't Christians that they're witnessing to and leading and helping. They're spiritually in a different place than you. But if you are constantly with people who are ungodly, you're going to be ungodly. It's just the way it is. Proverbs 13:20 says, walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. I think it's almost impossible to live the right life with the wrong friends. If that's what I know that doesn't sound nice, but it's just the way it is. If that's what your friends are all like, and you might have good friends and you love them, but if they're not wise, if they're not followers of the Lord, that's not good. In 1 Corinthians, Paul says, do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. You know, I don't know which of these are your big things. Maybe it's the time. Maybe you have good friends already. Maybe it's the going to a special place. I don't know what it might be. Sometimes you have to think about it before you even realize what it is. I was reading about a woman that had trouble with smoking, and so this counselor said, okay, I don't want you... He told the whole group of people who had this problem, addiction issue with smoking, and he said, this week I don't want you to stop smoking. I just want you to notice how much you crave smoking. And she said, I don't ever crave smoking. He said, okay, well, we'll just try it a week and go back and check. And so that week, whenever she felt a craving to smoke, she made a little mark, okay, on a piece of paper. She came back and she said, Doctor, I crave cigarettes all the time. And I didn't even know it. And so acknowledge it, to being aware of what you're doing, aware of what your bad habits are, and then asking the Lord to give you the strength to take away those triggers, to help you be the person you need to be. And you might say, well, I've tried that before and I failed, I can't do it. That's all right. Don't give up. Make some progress. Zechariah 4:10 says this, does anyone dare despise this day of small beginnings? Zechariah had a beginning. They'll change their tune when they say Zerubbabel sitting the last stone in place. I don't know what your issues are today. You might be thinking, I'm not even sure I should be in church because I got such a habit. Listen, turn it over to God. Turn it over to God. Don't wind up like Samson. Don't wind up your life over and you think, wow, I lost it. I lost it. Change. God give you the strength.